Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to intrude into your private spaces with what is a very personal message. My name is Anthony Olisa Okolo, and I speak to you today as a proud representative of the Igbo nation within the Nigerian Federation and a true believer in Republican democracy. Today, as we grapple with many issues of national importance, I've been permitted to speak the words and ideas of the Igbo peoples regarding the choice that we face in the next few months, leading up to the change of guard at the helm of affairs of the Federation. I've spent most of my life as a believer in Nigeria. Those who know me intimately know that recently I've seen fit to follow another course, one that leads me to hold strong views on the future of the Federation. I believe that the issues confronting us cross ethnic, religious, and party lines. We are told that the issues of the election of 2023 are the maintenance of unity, peace, and prosperity in our Federation. The line has been used: we will never have a better option than Nigeria, or that we are better together. But I have an uncomfortable feeling that these statements aren't something on which we can base our hopes for the future. No nation in history has ever survived the multiple security threats, ethnic tensions, discrimination, and corruption that has become the hallmark of today's federal government. Today, more than 2 naira out of every 1,000 earned in this federation, according to the 2021 budget, is spent on a non-receipted miscellaneous security vote. Due to this, a corrupt military establishment continues to fritter away this free money under the guise of fighting a war on terror, leaving little wonder why our security apparatus has little incentive to win the war when it is creating billionaires every day. Billionaires who are feeding fat on the lives of the youth of this federation, who die as soldiers in various battlefronts within our borders, from the east to the west, to the northeast and northwest, ill-equipped, ill-prepared, and largely forgotten. The flower of our youth is paying the price for our government's decisions today. We've raised our national debt to figures that threaten to mortgage the life of the Federation and limit the capacity of our Federation to ever grow out of this lack of self-sufficiency. The 2021 budget borrowed 4.28 trillion, which pushed our debt servicing to 13.5 trillion. 13 trillion naira. Most Nigerians in our poverty cannot even begin to imagine these figures. And yet, the government seeks more, and more, gorging itself like a maddened glutton, unable to tell he is eating himself to death. Today we are suffering crippling fuel scarcities and deprivation amongst a rising double-digit inflation. The police are threatening to strike, and the teachers of our universities are already on theirs. Insecurity is the watchword from north to west and south to east. We have failed to reach the next level promised by the president, and when we complained peacefully, our own army turned against the people, murdering hundreds at Lekki Toll Gate in 2020, according to the Lagos panel reports, and hundreds more across the Federation, whether they have been Shiite, political agitators, or just common citizens asserting their rights. As for the peace that we will preserve, I wonder who amongst us would like to approach the wife or mother whose husband or son has died in the fight against Boko Haram and their sponsored bandits, and tell me if they think this is a peace that they should maintain. Go and ask the widows in Imo State whether this government has meant peace for them. Do they mean peace? Or do they mean they just want to be left in peace? There can be no real peace while one Nigerian is dying, or when groups of indigenous peoples are stripped of their rights. We are at war with an enemy from within, the sort that destroys great empires and brought civilizations to its knees. Barbarians, cannibals, kidnappers, rapists of all kinds. All the hordes of brigands that have ever faced mankind in our long climb from the swamp to the stars. If we lose this war, our federation will disintegrate, and history will not be kind to us. So I think it is time we ask ourselves if we still know why we fought for independence, and why we have sojourned together for so long after throwing off the yoke of the British. Are we living the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers of this great nation? Will Tafawa Balewa, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Chief Awolowo, and Isaac Adaka Boro recognize the shallow and weak people we have become? This path is not the one they meant for us, and we must correct course. If we fail, and if we lose freedom forever, there is no place to escape to. This is the last stand we have and the last chance to get it right. Democracy as an ideal that government is beholding to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. I will go further to add that this idea can only be achieved with equity, justice, and fairness as the foundation of democracy. Not only should the right things be done, but they must also be seen to be done. In the context of our federation, where our futures have been decided for us for so long by a corrupt military establishment outside the consensus of the people, these virtues are even more important. This is the issue in the next election. Whether we believe in our capacity to be fair and to treat all citizens and indigenous peoples with equal respect in our quest for self-government, or whether we abandon the ideals of the Federation and each make the decision that we are better off about. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between remaining as we are or choosing to amend a faulty constitution. Well, I'd like to suggest that this is an overcomplication of where we are as a people. There is only an up or down. Up, where we begin to see that the most valuable resource we have for the positive development of our people is to raise our people to be the best that they can be, unfettered, free, and proud of our indigenous diversity, or down to the ant heap of oligarchy, where the chosen few will be selected as lords over the rest of us. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who will trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. In this vote harvesting time, they will use terms like the Nigerian unity is non-negotiable, as we were told previously by the president. The whole of the nation standing together against all odds is by far greater and would ultimately be more prosperous and viable than the sum of its distinguishable parts. The rhetoric is always empty, and the actions do not match the flowery words. The president is right to say that he is in a fight for the hearts and minds of the people, but what he does not know is that he has already lost that fight, and it is time to move beyond the policies of division that he has promoted within his years in power. These are not my accusations. A simple Google search will show that the Northern Elders Forum, Afenifere, or Haneze, the Middle Belt, Pandef, and even the majority of state governors, including the governor of his own state, Katsina, have made it clear that the current president has failed on all fronts and has taken the entire federation to the brink of the precipice. With less than 1/3 of his tenure left, the president now wants to concentrate on bringing home the dividends of democracy. He now wants to leverage ICT to build jobs, while shutting all individual efforts to build ICT-related business, including banning Twitter, cryptocurrency trading, and mercilessly supporting the demonization of our people for daring to afford to own a laptop. He now wants to re-energize and reorganize the security apparatus and personnel of the armed forces and the police, while for years allowing the same apparatus to silence soldiers for protesting poor equipment and non-payment of salaries. He now wants to assure families of slain police that their sacrifices would not be in vain, but has done nothing to assure the independence of the Police Services Commission, which is the body that can make far-reaching amendments to the welfare of members of the police force. He now wants us to believe he is committed to upholding the constitutional provisions that protect all Nigerians from any form of internal and external aggression, while in many cases, he and his administration's lackeys are perceived as the aggressors-in-chief on many issues which have been flashpoints across the nation. Extraordinary rendition, banning free speech, and attacking peaceful agitators. And that is the issue in this new election season that makes all the other problems I've discussed academic. Unless we realize we're in a fight for our future, a war for the soul of the Federation, a war which will determine the trajectory of our future, and which can only be won if we do things differently. Young people know that there is a difference between Nigeria, a failed concept, and Naija, a spirit that runs through the veins and arteries of the indigenous peoples of Nigeria. A spirit that allows the youth of this federation to proudly harness our similarities, but not without respecting the differences which make each indigenous nationality unique. To do things differently, we must destroy old myths sold to us by this corrupt military establishment. They who would trade our freedom for the so-called security and unity that we have never had are quick to point at my people, the Igbo, as the boogeyman that is responsible for all the ills in Nigeria. They tell other indigenous nationals, do not trust the Igbo. They point to one coup which we are meant to have used to gain ultimate power in Nigeria. And yet, they fail to recall that all the other coups against civilian and military governments for which they were responsible were led by non-Igbos. They call their policy national orientation and focus that policy on the balkanization of the indigenous nations that make up the Nigerian Federation, while they seize power for the benefit of their ever-shrinking group. They say to the Yoruba, the Ijo, the Jukun, the Tiv, the Birom, the Kataf, the Efik, the Ibibio, the Kalabari, the Edo, and over 300 other nations, give up your dreams of self-determination, of freedom, of autonomy, because to save our own skins, they bet we are willing to make a deal to live in a slave and master relationship with the old guard of military impostors as masters and the rest of the Federation as slaves. Like Alexander Hamilton said, and I quote, "A nation which can prefer disgrace to danger is prepared for a master and deserves one." Now let's set the record straight. Ndi Igbo have done more than any other nationality to build our Commonwealth. We have certainly done more than the share of our population to build up this federation. We know that we have been designated the antagonist part of the story of Nigeria, but the facts do not bear witness to that false myth. Ndi Igbo are nation builders. Our sons were at the forefront in our collective battle for independence. We played a major role in building the institutions that helped convince the British that their time in Nigeria was up. No one can deny our role as advocate to an unsure North and to an ever-independent West that it was time to let the British go. We played our part to come to terms on what would be the closest this federation has ever come to a common constitution of the Nigerian peoples, the 1963 constitution. While we were allowed the merit to serve this federation without hindrance, Nigeria was considered the fastest growing economy in the world. And yet, when power was available, we shared it, taking the ceremonial seat as Governor General when Tafawa Balewa was rightly chosen to lead the new democracy as Prime Minister. In the enterprise that became Nigeria, Igbo led the way in integration across the nation. Then, that was seen as a ploy to dominate. But today, is this not what the National Orientation Agency is asking all Nigerians to do? Everywhere in Igbo sojourn, we have paid the price, and fair price indeed, for the lands where we live and work, and have committed all our being to building estates, towns, and markets across the Federation. Every major city that exists within this federation bears the imprint of Igbo industry. Yet, the masters tell us that we are to be hated for refusing to accept the mediocrity that they are known for, and maligned for being true to our entrepreneurial spirit. This is why we are told that an Igbo man should never be at the helm of affairs at the center today, nor should we be ever allowed to handle the commonwealth of the nation. Being Igbo, it is feared that we will break this myth that Nigeria's diversity cannot be harnessed to create a new vision for Nigeria, one that focuses more on developing our vast human capital and focuses less on being the errand boys to foreign powers. Being Igbo, we are feared for being Republican in nature and do not believe that any voices should be silenced. The press will be allowed its freedoms to report and criticize, for only through honest criticism can lessons be learned, and alternative viewpoints lead to a healthy discussion. Being Igbo, we see that the vision for this federation is to enhance our internal trade, building transport links across the federation to allow goods produced in one part of the federation to be traded wherever it is needed, quickly, safely, and cost efficiently. Being Igbo, our love of wealth allows us to encourage everyone to build up the commonwealth, ensuring that an honest wage is paid for an honest day's work, and that the farmer gets fair value for their sweat, the teacher for their vocation, and the civil servant for their duty. Our vision comes naturally to us as a people. This is what will increase our national GDP, expand our economy, build jobs, and reduce our dependence on imported goods. Being Igbo and the subjects of regular police brutality, we will be keen to push police reforms that will end the SARS and the other quasi-legal security outfits. By focusing on the welfare of the police, increasing the quality of its rank and file through training and education, we can build a police force that will once again take pride in its work and that will see itself as partners with the civilian population, not as sworn enemies of it. Being Igbo, we see the amendment of the Constitution not only relevant but essential to the survival of the Federation. Being Igbo, we will support the independence of the judiciary as we cherish the maxims that justice should never be delayed nor denied to anyone. Having been part of a war for independence ourselves, and having returned to continue to build this federation, we understand that the calls for autonomy, such as resource control by the Ijaw, special status by Lagos, and devolution by the Yoruba, are not calls made by unthinking secessionist groups, but rather the cries of frustrated nationals who only seek a return to equity, fairness, and justice in the Federation, so that they too can have the freedom to decide the quality of life they will achieve for their future generations. Having been ourselves relegated to bottom feeders in a nation for which we have poured out blood, sweat, and tears, we understand how to stop the brain drain and encourage a return of our millions who now create value for other countries, building their economies, winning their sporting awards, and making their scientific discoveries. Having been denied a chance to show what we can do on the national stage as the premier decision maker for so long, it is time we too are given a chance. Nigerians have the capacity to do the right thing. When the annulment of the June 12th election led to a complete exclusion of Nigeria from the international community, all Nigerians came together to return a Yoruba man to assuage the wrath felt by the Yoruba nation for the unkindness levied against their son. When the time came for change, the entire Federation stood against third-term campaigners and returned power to our northern brethren, in particular to a key family that had stood for democracy in our darkest days as a nation. When fate brought power to the center, to the Igbo and the south, the entire Federation accepted the winds of fate and supported the candidate who was chosen to lead us. Will Nigeria continue to deny the Igbo a chance to have our own opportunity to guide the machinery of state? Will the myth that Igbo are not to be trusted continue to energize a false feeling that we must be denied what is now long overdue? I do not believe that there is one honest Nigerian who believes there is a justification for the continued denial of a fair chance for the Igbo to lead this nation come 2023. Therefore, on behalf of the entire Igbo nation within the Nigerian Federation, we call on our brothers and sisters in the north, the west, the east, and the south, in the interest of the growth of peace, harmony, equity, and social-political balance of our Federation, to support and actively engage in the emergence of a president of Igbo extraction who will build bridges and lead this Federation, not as a sectional leader, but as a nation builder, charged to heal the wounds of the past and propel us all with a vision for the future. We do not need to search for them. There are many already, both male and female. They exist. We know them, and we know by their track record that they have what it takes to do the job, provided that they have the support of the rest of the Federation. A rejection of this call would be unwise. It would be interpreted by Igbo that we have been totally rejected by this Federation, not for the first time. That our sacrifice in playing our part in achieving independence, our sacrifice in sustaining federal character through our sojourn in different parts of the Federation, and our sacrifice in waiting patiently too for reintegration into the national polity has been in vain. It will remind us that we are not wanted in this Federation, and it could be a signal for some Igbo that Nigeria would rather accept disgrace than allow justice to prevail. Every Nigerian who is Nigerian today is Nigerian because they belong to one of the indigenous nationalities within this potentially great federation. Therefore, you and I must have the courage to say to those who do not believe in equity and fairness that there is a point beyond which they must not advance. There is something going on in the affairs of the world in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a duty to break this wheel of distrust regardless of our indigenous nationality, and to join hands together to build together, each bringing our own special flavor, our own special quality, our own special spirit of Niger into this endeavor. Only then can we preserve for our children this beautiful hope for the black man on earth, this amazing and beautiful conglomeration of nations that we call the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Igbo have faith in you, and we know that deep down you have faith in us. Let us show the world that we have the dignity and the right to make our own decisions and determine our own destiny together. Thank you. Thank you very much.